So it may start out with some secondhand instruments, a cheap guitar. Maybe you're in a tiny club or a basement club, and a shout and the sound that turned music from this polished product into something that was more raw and more intimate and more in your face. I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history teacher, and we're going through Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire," lyric by lyric, line by line, and Moonshot, Woodstock, Watergate, punk rock. So when Billy Joel sings punk rock, he is pointing to the mid-'70s and that burst, that reset music and style. You know, you think of these short songs, these very fast tempos, do-it-yourself records, and kids that were just turning, these small clubs into scenes where people want to be. The roots of this all formed on both sides of the Atlantic. In New York, you have these small rooms like the CBGB that saw bands such as the Ramones and Patti Smith Group and Television and Talking Heads, and they strip songs to hooks and just attitude. In London, the economic frustration of the time and the youth style fed groups like the Sex Pistols and the Clash and the Buzzcocks. And you have independent labels that are pressing out singles that sounded just like news bulletins. They were very current. You had different voices but the same energy. And that was "do not wait for permission." And what made it feel new was not just the speed at which it moved. And punk valued the DIY ethics of the time. You could book your own show, photocopy a zine, and press a 7-inch and then just build a scene around you. Fashion carried the message. Safety pins, ripped T-shirts, short hair, leather, and then slogans that you could stencil at home. And the look said, well, anybody can join. And the ripple effect was huge. In the late 1970s and early 80s, the scenes multiplied. You had post-punk that experimented with rhythm and texture. Hardcore began just to slam the tempos. And then indie networks that learned how to tour outside of radio. Even pop began to kind of absorb the lesson. You had very tight choruses. There was no wasted bars. And then there was a belief that, well, the personality could just crush the polish. And, why does it fall here in the timeline of the song? Well, it's because punk arrived as arena rock was beginning to expand, and disco was kind of ruling the charts. It gave restless kids a cheaper door into culture, and it taught the industry that gatekeepers can be bypassed. When we do tie it back to Billy Joel's song, punk rock, it captures a rethink of music and identity. Where a basement and a borrowed amp, they were enough to basically start a movement. The reason why it matters, well, punk explains, how DIY tools plus a community can change an art form. It reshaped venues and labels and style, and it keeps reappearing whenever, culture could use a reset. If you enjoyed this particular episode, I'm going to move on to the next one. We got another line ahead of us here, so we finish this line. We're going to go next with Begin. So we'll talk about Menachem Begin in the next video, the next episode. Thanks for watching.